What is he really like? Like, why did I have a tear in my eye too? Because I mean, you knew the man. What about him was so just transcendent? I don't want to do a hagiography for the man, but something about him was just so real.
I don't know. Like he he was never anything but what you saw. I knew him as a. He showed up at my doorstep one day. I had like this little magazine on the Lower East Side. My first book contract, I bought a computer. It was like 1981, and it was, I'm sure you remember those dot matrix printers.
They were really expensive and really loud.
Yeah, really loud, and it worked on fan fold paper, and it had those sprockets on it. It would come out like in a big sheet, and it's printing up a manuscript. And I have a printing press here. My daughter was 3 years old, and she loved to draw. I'm not a very good artist, but I had some life to my art, and so I used to draw with her. So printing press, and I lived in a tough neighborhood, and he was selling a lot of dope on the streets. So I actually just went to friends and stuff, people I know, got some stories together, and I put together this magazine, and I drew pictures on each magazine, a different picture, and put it in these plastic bags and brought it to the local bookstore, 25 copies. It took me a long time to print them. And by the time I got home, they were on the phone. We want more. We sold them all out. And so like I was onto something, and not much later, I got a manuscript in the mail, and it was a comic book. And the drawings were okay. They weren't weren't good. The writing was really, really good, So I wrote the guy a note. I wrote everybody a note. I never would just send back a rejection slip. I always wrote something, and I wrote him a little note. Nothing that great or anything. Just I said, your art sucks, but your writing is really good.
Some human acknowledgement.
Yeah, and the next thing I know, somebody rings the buzzer downstairs. I lived on a fourth floor walk up. And I run downstairs, and it's this guy, this tall, handsome guy, young guy, who's probably in his middle 20s, in his chef white. And it was Bourdain. And, he came upstairs, and he was just, he was really interested in making himself a better writer. He wanted to talk about it. He didn't know anybody. But he wanted to be a writer. And, we stayed friends all those years, really close friends. I ate in the kitchen of every restaurant he worked in, and he was just always looking to improve his work and make his writing better. And he was really insecure about it, but in a genuine questing way. He was always on a path. And I think that he never abandoned that path. He never thought differently about himself. He always opened himself up to others, his heart and his mind, and he had a steel trap mind for things that he was interested in. He was just as you saw him on TV, just as your mom saw him, just as my mom saw him and met him. My mom's met him many times at our house. And people respond to generosity of spirit and that genuine quest of a person like that. And it proved itself out, throughout his career. I mean, as devastating as his death was, to see how many people responded as if it was a close friend, a member of their family, that's a remarkable testament to who that person was.
It's funny, you meet a lot of people. I'm very curious about some of the folks you've met, but even the sort of the B and C level folks I've met in this world, quote celebrities, professional, famous people. You meet some of these people and they're so insincere and they're so aware of being important. Like, obviously I know the answer because it's transparency, but Anthony didn't strike me as someone who was in love with being famous. He just seemed like a regular guy who did all these things.
He wanted to share whatever he had achieved. He wanted to share with people. And he was, all the times that I was with him, I never saw him reject anyone. People would come up, can I have my picture? Will you sign this? Can I ask you I never saw him say no to anyone, and not even like just saying, okay, let's take the picture. He was always super nice to everybody, and it wasn't crap. That's who he was. He was sort of mystified about what happened to him. He didn't think he deserved it. He thought he was pulling something over everybody's eyes. They didn't really know who he was. They didn't know how lacking he was in talent and good fellowship. He thought he was getting away with something.
So like classic imposter syndrome?
I don't know if it was well, maybe. I mean, maybe. He felt like he was being chased by the cops, and he was always looking in the rearview mirror to see the lights, and they were gaining on him. I don't think he thought he was an imposter as much as he thought he was undeserving.
He touched so many people, like with his affect and his style, I literally did this. I'm sure I'm not the only one. So when I found out he passed away, my dear friend and I, we went to like the best Thai restaurant in Chicago, or one of them. Supposed to be, I think he actually ate there. It's very sort of low key. And of course we had to narrate our meal as though he was narrating the TV show. And then the thing that really endeared me, going back to him as a person, he loved Popeye's chicken. And my father had one of his clients when he had the little business was Popeye's chicken. And my father, hope no one takes this for a movie because there's a great scene, would come home with Popeye's fried chicken in garbage bags. And he was like Popeye's Santa Claus, and he'd refry the chicken. And I'm like, Anthony Bourdain was highbrow. He could cook with the best, but he loved Popeyes. And I was like, that says a lot about the man,
Hey, listen, not the very last, but one of the last meals I had with him was him and his daughter, and we went to Papaya King for a hot dog. And we liked it. That was him.
What did he say when he met Obama? Did he talk a lot about it? I mean, because again, all the circles he traveled in, or was he just so self-effacing? He's like, oh yeah, I met Obama, and that was. How did he handle meeting folks like that?
Frankly, I don't remember, except that he said that what a great guy he was. And he was not cavalier about that in any way. I mean, he loved Obama as one of probably the greatest president, certainly the greatest president of our lives, and probably of the 20th century. Just the elegance of the man, the incredible lucidity of his thinking, and how it's hard to believe he didn't connect with every person in our nation, but just his openness of spirit and intellect, how welcoming his mind was. Tony, he recognized how fortunate he was in his life. Even the same time, I'm telling you that he felt he was undeserving of it. He relished. Oh man, he was getting worn down. I mean, he was tired. Not long before he died, he was telling me how happy he was.
I know it's an intensely personal question because I had a dear friend of mine who killed himself. He hung himself from a ceiling fan on Thanksgiving as a big F you to his parents. Were you angry at him? Because I'm frankly a little angry that because you leave behind, your person's in pain, and I was really angry at my friend. I've since let it go. But it's like somebody does that, and they're in pain, and you feel angry. I mean, did you have those moments? You're like, dude, why the F did you do this, man? We love you.
If I personalized it and made it about myself, I did feel angry because we had so much work that we were planning and were well into. But mostly what I felt was, and not to make this about me, but I felt like I failed him in some way. I've gone back like our last correspondence and stuff, and I I see that from being effusive, he got to be almost one-word answers to like questions I had. He was traveling most of the time. We worked mostly through email and messaging. And from being like really into it, he was going one word, great, this sucks, whatever. And in retrospect, I thought, oh, I should have been aware that something was going on. But that's more about me than him. I don't know. I feel bad. I just feel bad that he had so much to offer, and he was so singular in what he offered and his ability to touch so many different kinds of people. That's a great loss. He was one of the good ones. There are lots of good ones out there, but this was one of the good ones. Yeah, and this is a loss for all of us. Someone who was able to connect with so many